All right, happy Friday, Roto Pros fans. I'm Chris Durrell. I'm here with Josh Cronfield. How's it going, Josh? Been a while.
Doing great. How are you, Chris?
Oh, doing awesome. Had a great first half. Things look really good in baseball. Came along quite a bit, added a bunch to the sheet, so things went really good there. Other than that, PGA, NASCAR's been going really good as well. Got a good couple sweats going on in PGA right now, getting ready for NASCAR. So
Love that.
really happy that baseball's back and get into this slate and in the second half and profit as we get down the stretch. I like second half baseball,
I agree.
especially towards the end of the season, because a lot of people start losing interest and they're just, they're not putting as much time into the research or lineup construction because football season's right there. They're doing season long drafts and stuff like that. NBA's coming up, NHL's coming up. Their minds are going elsewhere. So it's a great time. If you haven't got in yet, to get in, come check out what we got over at RotoPros right now. I mean, if you're a new member, check out our free trial. And after our free trial, if you use promo code MLB, you'll get 50% off your first week, month, or yearly, I believe, into your subscription cost there. So that's promo code.
A year is it's a hell of a deal. Just saying.
Yeah, exactly. So come in, check out what we got. Use that promo code. That's promo code MLB and come see what we got. So yes, so coming back, we got 15 games, but two of them, we've got an early afternoon game at 2:20 here, Pittsburgh at Chicago, a day game, not really
It's a
concerned
shame,
about
man.
that.
I love me some Josh Bell. I'm ashamed. I'm pissed he's not on the main slate.
Yeah, that's a good matchup, too. I even like the Cubs versus Archer. I mean, Archer hasn't been great. I always go back to the trade and look at the Chris Archer versus they got Meadows and who was the other guy, the pitcher, Glasnow. I'm going to say Tampa Bay won that trade.
Tampa's GM is very good. I don't know who it is. All I know is Rocco Baldelli came from that organization. He's killing it up in Minnesota right now. So
Yep. But after that, then there's a 6:05 Eastern game. You got to play the all-day slates if you want to get a part of that, Washington, Philly. But what we're going to concentrate on here is the 13-game main slate tonight starting at 7:05 p.m. Eastern. We're not going to go game by game. We're going to talk about some of our favorite pitchers, top tier, medium tier, value plays, GPP, cash, that sort of thing. And then we're just going to touch on – we don't have lineups doing the show this early in the day, but we kind of know coming at All-Star break, especially what the lineups are probably going to look like. But we're just going to look at teams, what teams we want to stack tonight, because that's kind of the way we discuss it in chat with our members each and every day is don't try and pick one-off players from 5-6 different teams. Work on stacks. And me and Josh do stacks a little bit different. I know I like for cash games to go 2 or 3 player stacks. I think you like to go more 4 or 5. You like to go full stack.
Yeah.
But either way, you should be stacking.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 5-2-1 roster builds as well as the 4-3-1s.
Yep.
The stacking. But, I mean, look, it's nothing you really live or die by, of course.
No, exactly. And that changes day by day depending on the slate, what teams are going,
and that's also assuming multiple lineups are being played. It's not just one lineup you're throwing out there.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot that goes into it, but for the main point, I guess, of that, whether you do 2 or 3 player stacks or you do 4 player stacks, 5 player stacks, is you need to be stacking. You really don't want to miss that correlation, especially at the top of the lineup. We usually target players in the 1, 2, 3, 4 spots just because they're getting more at bats per game, especially the guys on the road. If you are targeting a guy down lower in the lineup, it's more of a GPP play for me, unless the guy's like super red hot. And I like guys that are on the road if they're lower in the bottom half of the lineup because they're going to get that extra, if the home team's winning, they're not batted in the bottom of the ninth versus the road teams always gets 9 innings. So
exactly, that's true. And I also like targeting guys at the bottom of a lineup when I'm stacking an offense that's going to be highly owned. For example, like the Yankees tonight, it's they have the most implied run total. Aaron Sanchez has pretty bad numbers this year. It's Toronto. Their bullpen's not great. So the Yankees are going to be a very highly owned stack tonight, but they're going to have some people towards the bottom of the lineup that are going to get overlooked for the most part by, the masses of people that are just jamming in, the first 5-6 hitters for the Yankees and, the usual suspects of Gary and Judge and Stanton, if he's back, I don't even know yet, but, the usual Yankees who are always, LeMahieu's amazing this year. So, deservedly so. Guys are probably going to have a good game, and it makes sense. And I'm not suggesting that you just fade these guys entirely. However, one way to stand out in GPPs, one way to, avoid the masses with ownership, and one situation where I genuinely like the bottom of the order without it being necessarily too GPP is when I'm stacking what is probably the most popular offense of the night, but, with the lower owned guys like Gio Urshela, for example, or Austin Romine if he happens to randomly be playing, or Brett Gardner if he's hitting ninth, something like that.
I love it. That's an excellent point. That's something I do almost every day is, if you can get a piece of the chalky guys, and also they're going to be more expensive, but
Right,
a team like the Yankees that is stacked 1 to 9 pretty much. I mean, you got Brett Gardner. I'm not saying he's an all-star player by any means, but he's an above-average major leaguer. He's hitting for average. He's got some power. He's the 9 hitter on the Yankees team. Like, that just makes me sick.
Especially when you have the rest of the offense is just knocking a pitcher around, or he's working really, really hard because he's scared about giving up a home run, and he's working really hard to paint corners, and he's just missing, or he's just hitting them. That's like emotionally and physically draining. So there's more of a chance that a pitcher maybe takes a guy like Brett Gardner hitting ninth for granted, and boom, he's in your lineup, and hangs a fastball or something. So,
and there are many teams.
It gives you the option to fit some better pitchers in there too, because you're playing some of the cheaper guys.
Yep, and there's many teams that we can target that with, and we'll discuss that throughout these shows. What teams we can target to lower the order. And I agree with you. That's the top team I was going to talk about. I know we were going to talk about pitchers first, but the Yankees are definitely they have a 7.1 implied run projection.
Yeah, tonight. We can transition that into Domingo Germán if you want.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to let you talk about him. You're a little bit more on him. I'm more GPP when it comes to Germán. The Jays have been a little bit better. I'm a little bit biased there, but you got the wind blowing out 10 mile an hour. It's about 85 degrees. It looks like at game time. So it's a little bit warm. So I'm not really on the pitchers on this, but I think he's going to be super low owned.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. The Jays have been much better over the last 14 days, but
overall,
significantly, in terms of offensively, I'm talking about. Well, I don't know much about the defensively and their win totals, but their ISO is arguably the best in baseball, and their WOBA is up 359. So that's very good. But look, I do like Domingo Germán. He gets a ton of Ks. Even with the last 2 weeks of being hot, the Blue Jays are still sitting with an 85 WRC plus against right-handed pitching, which is obviously not that great. It's bottom third of the league for sure.
And hey, before you move on, I just wanted to explain that WRC plus number, just for the people that maybe are like, what does that mean? Yeah. So 100 WRC plus is going to be standard. So anything below that is a percentage point. So he's saying the Jays are 85 WRC plus versus righties. That means they're 15% less weighted runs created than league average. So they're 15% less than the league average. And that little plus at the end of the weighted runs created, that just means it's park adjusted. So it's just looking at league average park factor, not just because obviously, I mean, if the sample size is Colorado's played at home their last 10 games, obviously their weighted runs is going to be a lot higher just because it's a better park. So the plus just takes that and makes it all league average. So sorry about that. Go on.
Don't apologize at all. Not only was that a good explanation, but I hope now the people who didn't understand it before can see why that's like such a highly respected stat, because it's so all encompassing that it's literally taking into account different ballparks that we know as baseball fans are more offensive, such as Coors. So you see it all the time in my articles and Chris's articles, and you're going to hear it from our mouths all the time. But WRC plus, weighted runs created, is one of the most important stats to understand for just being a baseball fan, but definitely for being a DFS baseball fan. And the way you look at it, you can draw conclusions offensively about offenses, hitters, pitchers, you name it. So. Anyway, moving back to what I was talking about, Domingo Germán gets a ton of Ks. I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but Toronto being a good plus matchup. His ERA is 3.67, and then the next definition you can give our viewers is about the xFIP, which is 3.79, which is pretty consistent with his ERA. You want to explain why xFIP is such a cool stat as well?
Yeah, it's just kind of a sabermetric thing where you're looking at, obviously ERA is your earned run average, but xFIP is going to be your expected fielding independent pitching, I guess, is how they explain it. It's estimating a pitcher's expected run prevention and looking at things that he can control. So taking defense out of it, it's looking at outcomes like strikeouts, walks, hit by pitches, fly balls that he's allowed. And then it's also giving it a look at the average home run per fly ball rate, which pretty much is saying that, okay, this guy, sure, he's given up 3 straight home runs, or 3 straight games he's given up home runs or whatever, but he's working at like double what his home run per fly ball rate is, for his career. So this really not sustainable. So xFIP's really just taking and saying, okay, what's the league average park rate. So again, if it's not harming a pitcher who pitches in Coors, so it's good to cross those parks because, I mean, if you follow baseball, if you've been in baseball a long time, every park is different. Every atmosphere is a little bit different. I mean, when it comes to hitting atmospheres and stuff like that. So XFIP is just a little bit more understanding. So when I see a pitcher with, say, a 5 ERA, but a 2.5 XFIP or a 3 XFIP, which is very good, why has he been so bad on the ERA? Then we can start digging into like fly ball rates, and we can start digging into ground ball rates and hard contact and that stuff. It's kind of an indicator to say, is he going to regress to the mean and get better, or is he going to have negative regression and get worse, like a pitcher that's got a 2.5 ERA but a 5 XFIP? Well, it looks like he's going to get a lot worse because that's almost 3 runs worse on the XFIP side of things. So we can just start digging in then and asking the question of why. But it's an initial thing that I look at the two together to see which side of the regression curve pitcher is going to be on.
Yeah, and look, baseball is a game of numbers that can be applied to so many different things. You know, the game itself, for players, for us, for fans, for commentators, for people who, you know, you have to just make educated guesses. So none of this stuff is foolproof. But when you put together like some I guess some I don't know, conclusions that you've drawn from stats that you read, and you string a bunch of them together, that's how you make your choices, and that's how you build your lineup. So going back to Domingo Germán, he's also got a significantly lower whip and home run per 9 at home. So, you know, that's something that usually leads to, you know, a home run, and people on base can ruin a whole start in one inning. So I like Germán a lot. He's been very dominant this year, and he's priced up pretty accurately. I want to move on. I don't want to focus on him too much. It's my fault. We've been getting very extensive here. I hope you guys appreciate that and enjoy it because it's very important information. But that being said, I do like Domingo Germán for cash. Chris doesn't. But who else, Chris, are you looking at tonight? I'm definitely on. Garrett Cole's the most expensive guy on DraftKings. I'm not that into him on the road in Texas. I prefer to target left-handed pitching versus Texas due to their K rate. Met, I think, is way too expensive. He had like a decent first start, but for him to be 10K in a bad matchup is ridiculous. And Clevenger is someone who has a much lower xFIP than ERA, so he's someone who you could see probably, you know, being a little underpriced. But then there's the fact that the matchup against Minnesota is difficult. So who are you looking at tonight?
For me, even at the price difference, Germán at 8,600 on FanDuel and Cole at 11,400. I'm still leaning Cole right now. I built some lineups, and there's enough value on a big slate like this where I'm not too worried. It's the 12,000 mark where I start worrying a little bit on FanDuel. But I love the case. I absolutely love the case. He leads the league in xFIP at 267. I think he's third or fourth in ERA at 309. He's got a 37% K rate, which is number 1 in the league, 16% swinging strike rate. And pretty much that swinging strike rate is pretty self-explanatory. It's what the percentage of pitches that he throws that batters are swinging and missing. We can break it down further, get more advanced, and start looking at like outside the zone swings and misses. I mean, that's huge for strikeout guys. We'll do that in a later video. But swinging strike rate, just the total swinging strike rate, he leads the league in that. He's right up there with Clevenger. Clevenger's got a lot smaller sample size just because of injuries and stuff. He has only started, I think, 3 or 4 games. But Cole's easily my number 1. The other thing I look at is the WOBA he's given up, 272, which is awesome. It's in elite territory. His ex-WOBA, which is looking at average exit velocity, launch angle, that sort of stuff, the stuff that MLB StatCast looks at, his ex-WOBA is 258, so close to 20 points lower than his actual WOBA. He's been outstanding this year. And when it comes to
couldn't get one more strikeout against Pittsburgh, because then I would
I agree with you that going into Texas where it's hot, I believe it's going to be probably in the 90-plus range tonight. Yeah, looking at 91 at game time. Really great park for hitting. The wind is blowing out for lefties, so that's kind of a concern for those Texas lefties. If you want to get really contrarian in GPP, Texas lefties would be maybe a way to go. I'm not really on board with that. I just like that Texas overall.
At GPP, I like it.
Oh, for sure. It's going to be – they're going to be 2% owned, 1% owned.
Exactly.
And we've seen –
Cole gives up the long ball if he's pitching badly, which is very, very rare.
And we've seen ace pitchers this year absolutely crush lineups this year, all year. There's obviously the ones that have screwed us over, overshadow the ones that have been dominant, like Cole a lot of times. But a lot of ace pitchers get blown up.
2 seconds. Can you just hold it down for 2 seconds?
Oh, right. For sure. Yeah, so I mean, there's more home runs this year, so we've seen ace pitchers getting blown up. So it's not crazy to think that Texas lefties in a great hitting environment are going to hit Cole. I just really like his K rate. He's been absolutely dominant no matter where he pitches. And although it's in Texas, the last 7 and 14 days, just looking at those stats for Texas, overall, that's looking at lefties versus righties, and we know that they face more righties than lefties. 31% K rate over the last 7 days, 30% K rate over the last 14 days. I just absolutely love the upside. And on DraftKings, I've been playing a lot more DraftKings lately. I've started to realize that you really need those strikeouts. Strikeouts are just like create the highest floor. So I'm really looking at him. And then I got a big gap in my targets. I got obviously Herman, who you've almost convinced me in cash at 8,600 on FanDuel, but I'm going down the board quite a bit. Love Yonny Chirinos tonight for Tampa. He started out the season as like they call it like projected long relief guy. So he's been their main long relief guy for their opener, I guess. They've had that a lot, but they moved him into the bullpen. I wrote about him in my article today. They moved him out of that long relief role and into the rotation. He's been excellent lately. He faces a Baltimore team. They were a little hot there for a week or two. They went into the All-Star break stumbling. 82 WRC plus over the last 7 days, 26% K rate. We know their overall numbers are bad. They're bad against righties, 84 WRC plus against righties. Their lineup is full of strikeouts. Not that Chirinos is a big strikeout guy by any means, but just go over and look at his numbers here real quick. Yeah, he's a little below average at 21% K rate, but he gets a little bit above average swing and strike rate. But going up against Baltimore at that price, like we've seen Chirinos, I believe on DraftKings at times he was up in the $9,000 range, and on FanDuel I believe he was in the mid-8s. He's only $6,800 on FanDuel tonight. If you want to absolutely load up on bats, and this would be a night to do it because there's like 5 offenses that I like, expensive offenses, I'll say that. 6,800 on FanDuel. Chirinos is awesome.
Offenses are the same thing as offenses, guys. Just in case anyone.
Yeah. It's just the Canadian way we say it sometimes. But yeah, Chirinos, I absolutely love his price. And then going down even further.
Yeah, big Chirinos fan too. Good matchup. Great matchup.
I call him Chirinos too. Totally.
Oh yeah. I didn't even mean to do that one on purpose.
Yeah. This isn't like fantasy naming, so I'm not getting paid for naming.
Yeah. Actually, you didn't know you get docked every time you make a mistake.
Oh my god, shit. I'm gonna have like 0 made this month.
Yeah, this is Trump's America, man. You gotta talk American. No Canadian here.
And then going even cheaper, these are going to be more GPP plays for me. I guess you could consider him as an SP2 on DraftKings. Jason Vargas. He's in an excellent park. By my rankings, which is like a 3-year rolling average, Miami's the best place to pitch in.
Didn't he pitch a complete game shutout against them earlier this year?
Yeah, I've got his game logs up here, actually. Against Miami. Yeah, his first start of the season, he went 5 innings, gave up 2 runs to them. That is the only time he's faced.
Sorry, I'm thinking about San Francisco. He did a complete game shutout against.
Yeah, start of June there.
Yeah.
So I've been waiting for him to blow up all year. He gave up 4 earned runs in back-to-back starts in early April. Other than that, he has not given up more than 3 earned runs once. He's shown some K upside this season. He's producing over 42% ground balls. His xFIP is a little bit higher, but when I look at that, another thing is when xFIP is higher than an ERA, and you're thinking, okay, this guy's going to regress. Start looking at his ground ball rate and his hard contact rate. If he's producing a lot of ground balls and not giving up a lot of hard contact, sometimes that can be sustainable. So he's only given up 34% hard contact rate, which is, I believe, 4th or 5th best top 5 on this slate tonight. So it's fairly sustainable. I mean, he's under 8K on DraftKings, and he's facing Miami, who's been kind of a disaster this season against lefties. They have a 73 WRC plus. So we were talking in like the 80s, mid 80s being bad WRC plus. This is 27% below league average against lefties. They strike out more versus righties, but just the fact that he's only 7,800, we don't need 8-9K upside. 5-6 Ks if he goes 5-6 innings. A K per inning is all we're really looking for at that price versus a really bad offense like this. So I'm 100% on board on Vargas. And then Chase Anderson's my last one. He's 9th in my model. But the only reason I'm going after him, he has like almost 0 upside. But he's facing a weaker San Francisco team. I get it. They've been hotter going into the break, but that lineup overall is not that intimidating. And Anderson's only 6,300 for a -190 favorite tonight, 6,500 on FanDuel. So that's just really what stuck out to me was the really low price tag, and he's a big favorite versus a below average offense.
I agree with everything you said. And the last two guys, I think. Hold on one second. I want to just confirm. Where's Kansas City? I like Jesse Chavez for the price on DraftKings. He's bare minimum. He's 4K. And I think he'll put up like a solid 3 or 4 innings tonight against Houston. I do. And for 4K, like that's, I can easily see him going for 3X. And Houston is also significantly better against lefties than righties. They still have good numbers against righties, but it's much better against lefties. And then the other guy I was going to say, so I also like Daniel Norris tonight too. He's on Detroit, so it's kind of like not really a team you're ever looking to target and stuff, but I at least always have one lineup that spends like 8K or like 9K on pitching total. So I'll have one like Chavez and Daniel Norris lineup tonight.
I'll stop you there. Norris isn't started. Spencer Turnbull was announced just before we started.
Oh, really? DraftKings hasn't updated it yet?
No.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So
and he's expensive too on DraftKings.
No, he's a better pitcher, but I like Norris's left-handedness. So
yeah. Turnbull's got a 3.31 ERA, but he's 9,000 on DraftKings. I'm not even interested a little bit at 9,000.
Yeah, and I'm probably gonna have some combination of like Herman and Chirinos as like my main favorite combo tonight.
Yeah,
but I do like Vargas too. So okay, I guess with that we'll move over to offenses. We've already spoken about the Yankees. They're implied for the most runs. They're going up against Aaron Sanchez, who has a 6.16 ERA and a 5.33 xFIP, which sure does suggest a little bit of positive progression, I guess, but. That's nothing you shoot for over a 5 ERA and nothing like that. So his whip is almost 2 an inning. It's bad, man. He's getting smacked all over the field. He's got blister issues, so sometimes that acts up on him when he's throwing a splitter and his start is over before it even begins in like the second inning. He's got an xWOB of 0.360. That's really high. His hard contact percentage is like 42% almost. So you 2 and 2 together there. If he's getting hit hard 42% of the time, that's not good. His average exit velocity is 90 miles an hour almost, versus someone like, Clevenger, where it's 84.5, or Chirinos, where it's 86.5. And those are big differences, even though it's only a couple of points. The Yankees are the obvious number one. Who are you looking to other than the Yankees tonight, Chris, and why?
Well, yeah, Yankees definitely, like we talked about, all through the lineup. You can do stacks 1 to 4, something we didn't talk about that I've been doing quite a bit lately and gets you a lot of lower ownership on those high ownership teams. Obviously, DJ LeMay, who's going to be a high-owned player. I like doing not just the bottom of the order, but a wraparound stack. Like you could do, if it goes projected like it's showing, it could be like Torres, Urshela, Gardner, and then get up to LeMahieu. Those bottom 3 are going to be low-owned, but you're mixing it in with a high-owned player on the same team, or Urshela, Gardner, LeMahieu, Judge, get the 1-2, 8-9-1-2, that type of thing. That's something you can do with these teams that are going to be high-owned if you really want a lot of exposure to them, but you want to be a little bit different in the crowd. That's one way to do it, is do wraparound stacks, bottom of the order, lots of that stuff. So other than the Yankees, the other team that I wrote up tonight was Oakland. I seen their implied run line has already jumped like a half run from last night when I started the article. I don't like the park. I think they're going to be lower owned because New York, Colorado, Houston, Cincy, they're all in good parks. They're all at the top of the run projection. So I think Oakland could be a little bit lower owned. I like them in cash games as well as GPPs. Cash games, I'm targeting like Matt Chapman and just hold on here. Just had something buzz at me. Sorry, Matt Chapman. Matt Olson's been red hot. He's up in the 3 spot. He's really heated up since he's returned. Semien has been a little bit cold lately, but I like him leading off. Their value. They're all under 4K on FanDuel. I believe they're fair priced on DraftKings as well. They're going to be low owned. And the biggest thing is they're facing Ivan Nova. He is coming off his best start of the year. Give up only 5 hits, no earned runs versus the Cubs. But he's not going too deep into games. He has like under 6 Ks per 9, which is absolutely terrible. So you don't got to worry about that. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, so he doesn't give up those opportunities, but he's given up multiple home runs 6 times this season. He's got a 19% home run to fly ball rate, 5.58 ERA. The xFIP is not that much more promising at 4.76. I love targeting Nova. Like I said, a bad park when comparing it to other parks, but the wind is blowing out a little bit in Oakland. It looks like about 7 to 10 mile an hour tonight, so I don't mind that. Temperature isn't great. Look at that more towards lock. I'm not going to get into the weather too much, but it's Nova. He gives up a ton of hits and a ton of home runs, and Oakland's going to be low. So that's the number one place I'm going. For GPPs, another low-owned option, I think is going to be the Angels. Obviously, we know that outside of Mike Trout, there isn't a whole bunch to like there, but I do like targeting Leak, who's been a little bit off this year. We've got wind blowing out there in LA as well. And like I said, I think they're going to be a lower owned just because of the other teams in the slate, the top 4. You can get like Calhoun, Trout, Ohtani, Upton. You can go a little bit lower and go Trout, Ohtani, Upton, Bohr. They're a lineup. I think you can kind of change it around a little bit. Like they got some upside, but they're really not consistent. So they're like GPP only. I'm not using any of their bats for cash, unless say a David Fletcher, who's really, really cheap at second base, all of a sudden jumps up again to the leadoff spot where he's hit a few times this year. But other than that, they're GPP only for me. So those are 2 teams I'm looking at.
Maybe on fire, though, the last obvious reasons. Obviously the team's very sad and unified or whatever, but it's like Trout and Ohtani are just hitting home runs every day.
It's too bad Tommy La Stella got hurt. He was doing awesome for them in the leadoff spot in front of Trout.
Yeah.
He's getting a ton of fastballs, and he was hitting them and getting on base. He made it to the All-Star game and then got hurt just before, wasn't able to attend. So that sucks for him, but that hurts their offense a little bit. But Calhoun's been pretty good lately, so either him in the leadoff spot or like Fletcher turns into a great value. And that's kind of a way, especially for cash games, that you can't really build your cash lineup until we start seeing lineups, because you're going to see some of these players that all of a sudden jump from 6, 7, 8 spot where you wouldn't target them, and they jump into the leadoff spot at for FanDuel, I'm thinking 2,500 on DraftKings, 3,500 to 4,000.
Yeah, see a Hanser Alberto for Baltimore hitting leadoff against lefty
versus a lefty. Yep,
exactly. That's someone you're referring to in this situation.
Exactly. So that's something we definitely got to look at. I mentioned LA and Oakland. Those are both late games too. So on your main slate, sometimes those teams are going to be even more low owned just because they're the late game. Sometimes those lineups aren't in yet. And I love targeting late games where lineups aren't in at main slate lock. Just because people don't see that number beside them, they're not going to roster them, they're not going to stack them. You can get, on a big slate like this, you might be able to pull off a 5 to 10% lower ownership stake on that team than you normally would if their lineup was in at lock. So that's another thing I look at from a strategy perspective.
Yeah.
Any other teams that you're looking at?
No, not really. I don't want to just say names just to say them here. I'm going to have a lot of the bottom of the Yankees order mixed with some people on Colorado. Let me see, actually, to make sure that I mean that. Yeah, Sonny Gray's been good, but, I think he's due for a little regression. We'll see. Nothing massive, but Colorado, I don't know. I'll have some Blackman. I'll probably have some Blackman tonight. Maybe some Dahl. I like a little bit Brantley and some of the Houston lefty bats. I'm a big Angels guy. I like their vibes right now. They seem like they're really unified, and that's important.
Yeah. What do you think about Milwaukee? That's one that we didn't mention. They got a great matchup versus Sean Anderson. He's got a 1.4 whip, so he's getting up a lot of hits and walks, a lot of opportunities there, and 39% high contact rate.
Yeah.
And a high xFIP, 460. So it's higher than his ERA, which is already not great at 4.23.
I was thinking high xWOBA, but yeah.
And that too, yeah. He's definitely looking for some regression. Like you said, the xFIP doesn't show it a whole bunch, but the xWOBA is 361, which is 40 points higher. And then even the slugging percentage, the X slugging percentage is at 470. So I like Milwaukee. They haven't been consistent is the only thing in Milwaukee. A lot of that has been Kane isn't having this season, they haven't kept him in the leadoff spot, kind of where he was last year, hitting 300, 320s. He's a guy I would rely on in cash games, just because he wasn't the power guy, but he was getting on base ahead of Yelich. He was scoring a lot of runs. They've moved him around from down even into the 5 spot this year.
He's getting old.
Grandal hitting leadoff. I mean, you could go that way for catcher if he gets up into the leadoff spot again today. Yelich is just crazy expensive, so it's more of a GPP play. Moustakas is even expensive. I told you I
like the 5-2-1 or the 4-3-1, something like that. They would be my 2 or 3, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I would put in a Yelich Grandal or a Yelich Moustakas Grandal, depending on what the rest of the, that would obviously be with cheaper pitchers or a cheaper offensive stack to accompany it, but still.
Yep. Exactly. Just kind of going over the last couple teams here. We did have a question.
I think the White Sox are a good offensive target tonight just because Mike Fiers looks like he's due for some massive regression.
Yeah. We had a question in chat. Wiggs is wondering, what do you think about Duffy tonight? He's got a great matchup, Danny Duffy. He's got a good matchup. He's cheap. He hasn't been great. He's only got a 19% K rate. 531 xFIP is full run worse than his ERA. He's below average swinging strike rate, so there's no upside. But, I mean, at that price, we're not looking for amazing upside. What I like about him is he's going up against Detroit. And while Detroit has been better against lefties, they're still only got an 82 WRC plus versus lefties and a 26% K rate. So that does give him a little bit more upside on the K side of things. I guess as a cheap SP2, probably only GPP only for me. I guess you can consider it for cash. But I just think there's better ways to go for cash. But for GPP, sure. He has had 8 Ks versus Toronto. He had 7 Ks versus Detroit last time he faced him. He went 7 innings versus them, only giving up 4 hits. So I don't see why for GPP you wouldn't consider that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. GPP is so cheap. But, that being said, I like to target right-handers against Detroit. I know it's only slightly, but they are better against lefties than righties. They got some people in the lineup who, like Castellanos, for example, who are capable of going, 4 for 4 on any given night against lefties, hitting a couple home runs. Miguel Cabrera is still a Hall of Famer, and he smacks left-handed pitching too. So Duffy has an ERA of 4.28 with an xFIP of 5.31. So another regression candidate. Not as much as others because he's got some decent other stats accompanying it. But, I mean, his xWOBA is 0.345 also, and that's high. So I think Danny Duffy's due for some regression. He's cheap enough where it's not like you're expecting a perfect game out of him at that price, but, GPP only. You
mentioned Castellanos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he crushes lefties. And the problem – his biggest problem, Duffy's, is he gives up like 41.2% fly balls, which is third highest on the slate. So a fly ball pitcher versus a home run hitter.
Hitting bombs for sure.
Yeah. So that kind of answers your Duffy. I like him. Sounds like a little bit more. Definitely GPP only. I'm very close to all formats, but like I said, there's just so many other ways to go for safety tonight. And then we had one more question here. And I have been looking at this a little bit because I'm going to play it, is the showdown slate from the Pirates and Cubs, kind of who I like here. I talked about targeting Archer before, so that's one way I'm going to go with Chicago bats. Top of the lineup, I definitely love Schwarber. I don't think you're going to be able to get all of them, so you're going to have to go with some value guys. I like targeting Darvish too. Not as much, but definitely wind's blowing in a little bit, so I guess you could do a lineup. If I had to pick a pitcher one to go with a pitcher, I'd probably go Darvish. He's got more K upside there, wind blowing in, so I don't mind that. But again, I think you could go Pittsburgh. I honestly think FanDuel Showdown, you don't have pitchers, so I would probably try and mix in like Frazier, Reynolds, Marte, Bell if you wanted to go a top 4 there. But if you're going for the bottom of the lineup, I like Melky Cabrera and Colin Moran, even Kevin Newman. In the 7 spots, you could go 5, 6, 7 there. On the other side, Jason Hayward's having a pretty good season. I like him. You can get that cheap rookie Robel Garcia, Albert Almora. I don't like Chicago's bottom of the lineup as much, so I think I would probably do a mix of the top of Chicago lineup and the mid to bottom of Pittsburgh's lineup on FanDuel. And then kind of the same thing on DraftKings, but I like Darvish if you're going to go with pitching. You want to take a chance on some upside there. Not that there's a whole bunch. He's kind of been trashed this season, but if you want to pick a pitcher, that's the pitcher I'd probably go with. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You kind of blocked out again. Say that one more time.
All right, do you have any thoughts on that slate?
On the showdown. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tuned out.
Darvish scares me, but I mean, he has shown that big time upside that we were used to in the past. Like he struck out 11 Reds back in May. And then against the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium, he went 7 innings, only gave up 2 hits and struck out 10. So, I mean, he showed that upside, but he's also showed a shitload of downside.
I'm not a believer in narratives 24/7, but yeah, he went back to LA where people kind of counted him out and he had a good game. So that doesn't shock me as much, but Pittsburgh was one of the hottest teams before the break offensively. I don't know whether numbers will really show that. They should, but I mean, the last couple games in particular, everyone remembers they just dropped like 18 runs like a week ago. So I have a feeling this could be a shootout. I would not really target the pitching. Look, both pitchers have over a 5 ERA too. Like it's not that I'm not going that much out on a limb saying that, you know?
Yeah, back up your numbers on Pittsburgh being hot. Talk about hot. Last 14 days going into the All-Star break for the Pirates. 380 WOBA. This is team numbers. 380 WOBA, 137 WRC plus. In case you don't remember, that's 37% better than league average over those 14-day sample size, and a 236 ISO, which is better than every team but Toronto in that 14-day span. So definitely like riding Pittsburgh versus Darvish. Like I said, mid to bottom of the lineup for Pittsburgh, high lineup for Chicago if you're going all bats. And then if you're going pitching, I'm definitely going to go with Darvish, who's just shown a little bit more upside this season. Archer, like I said, I just can't believe they made that trade. And then they missed the playoffs after they made that trade. And now what Meadows is doing with Tampa. I mean, he's had some regression lately. He's had some injuries too. But both of those players, Glasnow and Meadows, are going to be good players. But yeah, looking at Archer lately, 8K. He's had 8Ks in 3 of his last 5 starts. I guess he's really limited teams under 3. He's had some blow up starts, so I guess you could go either way. I just prefer Darvish myself at home, so that's the way I'm going with that slate. And I'm just going to go over questions here one more time, unless you have any other offenses that you're targeting tonight. Or
let's focus on the questions for sure.
Yeah, no more there. Do you have, I guess, one team that we didn't talk about? I just talked about Meadows a little bit, so I kind of touched on it. But what are your thoughts on targeting Dylan Bundy with Tampa Bay? Bundy's been like either really good or really bad, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, he's been, I don't like his upside, so I'll leave it. I think his floor is a lot lower than his upside, a lot higher than his ceiling, a lot lower than his ceiling.
Right. And, I mean, looking at targeting Tampa against him, he's given up 20 home runs in 17 starts this season.
Yeah, which has nothing to do with that.
Which I was looking at. So Tampa bats for me definitely makes sense. I mean, they're fairly cheap too. They're going to be lower owned. A lot of people see, a lot of people do box score chasing. So they're going to look at Bundy's last start. He struck out 6. Blue Jays, he only allowed 1 earned run. A lot of times he's only given up 2, sometimes 0. They'll remember those starts. But I'm looking at, especially for GPP, I don't care if a team's been hot lately or cold lately, looking at current form, or a pitcher, he's coming off a hot start. How many home runs has he given up? This is a home run game. I think you mentioned it to us in chat. Like teams are averaging like 1.3 home runs per game per team.
Ball's juiced this year. It's not even a question. Yeah.
It's crazy. There is no question. Like they're hitting more home runs than they did at the peak of the steroid era.
Exactly.
So I'm looking for pitchers that give up fly balls and give up a lot of home runs. And
Jesus,
Bundy does that.
I didn't even realize Jared Lorenzen was dead.
Yeah.
Jesus, sorry. That news just came to me. I thought he was on the weight and like getting better.
Yeah.
Yikes. All right. Rest in peace. Tonight's slate's dedicated to him.
And then back to Bundy here for a second. Just looking at his splits, he's had reverse splits. He's given up a 358 WOBA to righties and only a 307 WOBA to lefties. 13 of those 20 home runs have come up against righties. 545 slug versus a 415 slug. So he, in almost all areas, he's showing that he's been worse against righties. So, I mean, for Tampa, I love Tommy Pham. If he's hitting second, I'd love him. Yandy Diaz for upside. Pham, I would almost consider for cash, especially on FanDuel. He's always coming in about that mid 3K range. Very consistent player. Yandy Diaz for GPP. Definitely mix in Meadows, who's probably going to be back in the leadoff spot. And hearing rumblings, maybe Kiermaier's going to be in the top of the lineup. He's super cheap if you need a cheap outfielder. So definitely looking at Tampa bats. That'd probably be the last team. I think I've got For cores listed on my sheet right now, I've got New York, Houston, and Oakland. And then for GPP/secondary plays, I've got the Angels, Milwaukee, and Tampa Bay right now. Also with my sheet, you can grab a copy of it through the RotoPros chat. Like I said, if you're not a RotoPros member yet, get in, check out our three-day trial, and then after the trial, if you use promo code MLB, you're going to get 50% off your first payment, whether that be weekly, monthly, yearly. So get in there, check us out, get this sheet, and on the sheet, I've got green, which is going to be my core plays for the night. Blue are going to be GPP only/secondary plays, and then the guys that you're going to see highlighted in yellow, those are the value plays that I'm going to look at. You're usually not going to see value plays show up on the sheet until lineups start popping up, because like I talked about, very important seeing guys jump up from 8th, 7th in the order up into a 1-2 spot, 3 spot, things like that. So that's where the value plays come from. And if you have any questions at all, me and Josh are in there hour, 2 hours, somewhere in that time frame before lineup lock to answer all your questions, whether you want to do it in the public forum in the members chat, or if you want to do it one-on-one, talk strategy, talk players, talk matchups, whatever, we're there. Come check out what we're about. Had a great show. I'm glad we got back to this, Josh. Love chatting with you, going over the slate.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun.
Good slate tonight. A good show. We hope this helped, and we're always here to explain more, but you got to join the chat for that.
And one more thing, just up some future stuff coming up. I'm going to be doing some more videos like this. I'm going to try and do 2-3 times a week, whether it's me and Josh together, whether I do a pre-recorded show earlier in the morning instead of an article, that type of thing. We're going to be mixing in some more videos. And it's Friday. I'm going to be going live here tomorrow talking NASCAR, but I've got a video coming out tonight looking at the track. We've got practice 1 and 2 today. We've got qualifying today, and I'm going to be doing a video after that. Keep in mind that the inspection isn't until tomorrow, till pre-race, so that's why I'm going to do the live show tomorrow, just to kind of go over if there's going to be any movement. Other than that, let's go grind. Let's go make some lineups. Let's get some green screens, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Good. Thanks, guys. Sign up now.